I probably should have put a little bit more thought into how I'm going to start a podcast because it's not like I can say, welcome back to full, because this is the first episode. So I got welcome to Full Disclosure. My name is Christian Thayer, and this is going to be a podcast. Now, whether you're listening to this through one of the many podcast apps, or if you're watching me on YouTube or Facebook or wherever, welcome. If you are watching me, just know that this is primarily going to be targeted as a podcast, mainly because like the longer form content, could be seeing anywhere up from like 20 to 30 minutes, just depending on what the heck I'm talking about. So, you guys are busy. I get that. So you may not always have 20 to 30 minutes or thereabout to just sit down and watch a video. So if you are the type of person that's like, busy, but you still want to listen to what I'm saying, feel free to download any of your preferred podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I think we're going to be on Stitcher, unsure. But the point being, listen to me when you're driving to your listing presentations, to your closing appointments, all that fun stuff. Let's get right into today's episode. Also, if you don't necessarily know who I am and you're sort of finding this on accident, or maybe somebody sent this to you, go listen to the trailer where I sort of give a little bit of background about who I am, why, you should maybe listen to me, and, just sort of my credentials, if you will. So getting started into this week's episode, it is iBuyer Beware. Beware? iBuyer Beware? This episode is going to be about iBuyers. For those of you that don't know what the heck an iBuyer is, depending on where you are in the country, some states and markets are way more prevalent with them, and others are just getting their first taste. So an iBuyer is basically a company or sometimes a brokerage that has a separate branch where basically sellers of a house just input their information online. They give them a few facts, and within 48 to 72 hours, that company will then essentially give the seller a cash offer, which for the most part will only be dependent on an inspection. If you're listening to this and you're a real estate agent or you dabble in any sort of real estate stuff where you're like, wow, that could affect my business moving forward. Do I need to be aware of that? Well, we're going to talk about that in this episode, so stay tuned. So as I just mentioned, the whole process of an iBuyer is the fact that it makes it super simple for a seller. I mean, think about it, right? What if you are a family with a bunch of kids and you're looking to sell your house right now in this wonderful market, but you're like, my house is a mess. Do you know how busy I am? I don't have any time to do repairs, blah, 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 blah. With this whole process of iBuying, you don't have to clean your house. You don't have to get your house ready. You don't have to do anything because a company is willing to give you a cash offer sight unseen for the most part, and it makes your life a heck of a lot easier. Plus, most of the time, the offers that you're getting are cash. Last time I checked, cash is still king, unless you want Bitcoin, which is an entirely different episode. So throughout the remainder of this episode, I'm going to be talking about, if you are a real estate agent or you're just in the real estate game, is an iBuyer a threat to you? Will they be a threat to you? Or can you maybe use them to your advantage? Or do you not even need to worry about them? Are they just going to be a separate thing that also does real estate, but you as a real estate agent will always be needed, so it doesn't really matter? Well, we're going to find out. One of the more larger and prominent iBuyers in the nation at the moment, and there are a few, and I'll get to them in a second, but the main one for the most part is Opendoor. Opendoor was founded in 2014, and since then, the company has helped 50,000 customers in 27 markets. So clearly, if this is a big boy, a big competitor, if you will, 50,000 customers in less than 7 years in only 27 markets sounds like it's not a big deal. It sounds like they're not going to be taking over the world anytime soon. However, that is just one of many. And the way that this space is, for the most part, seemingly working out is that you have one of two options if you are an iBuyer. One, and the main option, is that you are a solely dedicated company that strictly deals with iBuying. You were created to be an iBuyer, like Open Door. Or you can be an existing brokerage and create pretty much a separate branch that is also an iBuyer. For example, Redfin has an iBuyer branch called Redfin Now. Next up is Compass Real Estate. They have an iBuyer program. They are primarily over on the West Coast. We also have, Zillow. Zillow is doing one now. They're not technically a brokerage, but they also weren't made to strictly, be an iBuyer. But that's also interesting because Zillow, that's an entirely different beast as it is. We all know what Zillow is. Love Zillow or hate Zillow, they are dominating the game. And now that the fact that they're getting into the iBuyer space, I don't really know how that would work, because last time I checked, for the most part, when you ask most people, when you ask them what their Zestimate is, what Zillow was estimating their house as, last time I checked, either I'm just really out of touch with how much houses are, which I don't think is the case, or Zillow is just way too happy to tell somebody that their house is worth way too much, which then begs the question, if Zillow is saying that your house is worth $50,000 to $75,000 more than, what a normal person would price it as, if Zillow offers is a thing, they're an iBuyer, are they going to give you what Zillow is estimating your house is worth? I don't know. Maybe that's like a follow-up question on a follow-up episode for this. And then last but not least, if you are in the Michigan area, Real Estate One family of companies also is getting into the iBuyer space, and actually has been into the iBuyer space. They have a service called House Hop. It is exactly what every other iBuyer is. You input your information online, and they, for the most part, within, I think it's 48 to 72 hours, essentially are going to give you a cash offer via email pending an inspection. So that is something to keep in mind if you are, maybe searching for a brokerage to want to work for, or if, your brokerage, if you are with the Real Estate One family of companies, that's one thing to keep in mind, because I think you will be able to use that to your benefit. And I don't think it will be as much of a threat to you as you may think. And we're going to be talking about that as this episode continues. So I looked on a website called iBuyer.com. Now, it's not an actual iBuyer. It's more or less like a resource / website to do research on about iBuyers. And they have a map of the US that basically, when you hover over a state, it's going to show you which of those markets in that state have an iBuyer in them. And so obviously curiosity got the best of me, and I just sort of, was figuring out which states are predominantly heavy with iBuyers. And they are ones that you might expect, such as California. We have Colorado, Texas, Florida, and North Carolina, to name a few. Now, when I say, that they have pretty heavy iBuyer companies and markets, I mean more than like 5 or 6 cities. So those 5-ish states, whatever I just said, have way more than 5 or 6. They're probably north of 10. And obviously California, Colorado actually had a bunch. Not entirely sure why, because I don't really think of Colorado as, I don't know if tech savvy is the word, but Colorado just seems like a weird one. However, I do know that Colorado is a very heavily sought after place to move. It's gorgeous. It gets 300 days of sun per year. Whenever it snows, the sun is out like the next morning. So not like I'm turning this podcast into an ad to moving to Colorado, but maybe. So point being, those were only the 5 states or thereabout that had significant iBuyer markets. Now, for those of you in Michigan, like I presume many of you are that are listening to this in the beginning, we only have 2 markets for the most part, and as you may have guessed, Detroit and Grand Rapids. So no surprise there, which also means that at least in the predominant future, maybe 5 years or so, you don't have to worry about iBuyers encroaching on your real estate turf, I don't think. Now, will the whole process of an iBuyer be something that you as a real estate agent needs to think about in the long term, 10 to 15 years? Absolutely. And we are going to be talking about that as we keep going forward, because yeah, the more you think about how easy it is to just type in your information online, yeah, I definitely think that's going to gain steam and popularity. Now, the one reason why you may not want to use an iBuyer if you are a seller is it's going to depend on what the market's doing. So right now, with the market being as hot as it is and as hot as it was, when you are putting your house up for sale and you are having 4 offers by the end of the night, no, it kind of seems dumb to sell your house in cash and essentially not at least attempt to get a bidding war. That's kind of when it would be stupid. Now, maybe 5 years from now, when the market is, I don't think it can still be like this. So assuming the market will be different, maybe it's a little slower, then yeah, that's when I think iBuyers are going to be dominating, because nobody wants to sell their house, put it on the market, and have it be on the market for 2 weeks, a month, whatever it is, when they can just type in their information online and maybe get, an asking price a little bit lower than what they're currently asking by having it on the market. But, some people, that's just going to be the easiest option for them. So let's build on that point a little bit more. So currently right now, iBuyers are not something that you need to really think about, really be worried of. One way that I think you can use an iBuyer, at least right now, to your advantage is, let's say that you have a house or houses or whatever that you've had and you've been trying to sell, and they just haven't been budging. They have not been moving. And you're just like, I want them gone. I don't want them anymore. Send them to an iBuyer. So yeah, you may be, missing out on potentially selling the house and getting that money, but the quicker you are able to sell their house, through an iBuyer, then the quicker you can help them buy a house and get money that way. So that is how I think you might be able to use iBuyers to your advantage. Now, again, iBuyers for at least the next 5 years, depending on the market, I don't think you have to worry about it. Now, the one thing that I did want to throw out is if somehow, some shape or form, you are a real estate agent in one of those 5 states that I mentioned, or even if you're not, you're just in a market that is being overwhelmed with iBuyers and you are struggling or you're competing, let me know. Get in contact with me somehow. And I would love to bring you on and interview you and just kind of pick your brain, because I think this is going to be a bigger issue than people are anticipating. And so as somebody who has a marketing background in real estate, this is something that I think we're going to need to be thinking about and setting up your marketing strategies now so that you can essentially protect yourself from any iBuyer. So basically, by starting now, by building your quote unquote real estate empire, 5 years from now, let's say that iBuyers, do come in hard and they are, stealing a lot of business away. If you have made yourself a big enough, real estate following and you've just solidified yourself as a real estate agent, maybe you won't have to worry as much as, somebody who did not take their marketing seriously or did not start doing videos as a real estate agent, because if you know me, I love telling you to make videos. So to wrap this podcast up, iBuyers are something to be aware of, but I don't think that they are anything to be scared of, at least for right now. Depending on your brokerage, if your brokerage has one, you might be able to use an iBuyer to your advantage to maybe offload a property or two that is just clearly not doing anything, and it would just be better off for them to buy it, and then you can help those clients go and look to buy a house. If you are, again, in a market that is just currently being overrun by iBuyers and you're somehow listening to this, let me know. Reach out somehow, and I would love to interview you. This, I think, has been a pretty decent first episode. Let me know. I think you can leave reviews on podcasts. That would be a great way for me to know how I'm doing, how I did. More than likely, these podcasts will be bi-weekly. So, every other week, look for one. And if you do want to continue listening to me, you would want to subscribe to my podcast. So that way, every time I upload a new one, you will get a little notification and a little ding that there is new content available for you. Thank you guys for listening this far. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know how to end these because normally I say I'll see you next time, but maybe I'll just like end it by playing some music and I'll just fade me out talking because I don't know how to do that.